What a day. I'm telling you, this spring cleaning has been going on for a week. I'm not wait, I am complaining, but I'm not complaining about making the time to be here tonight with at least Stella Twag. How you doing, man? Glad to see you. It's a flat earth nation. Mudflood was Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. I have things written down. I have tabs pulled up. I had to take a night off because I've been working out, actually, working, getting spring cleaning and stuff. I think I read that last night. Got some new writing here. Got some on your regular line. Have a little bit on your college ruled spaces. I'm saying that because I've got a lot of topics in my mind, but I'm not sure where they're going. I'm just glad everything's working. Even have some Jonathan Click pulled up, getting the hammer put to him by Dr. Heiser. Was just looking at some videos that Yoris, you know him as QB, sent me. This is soap film bubbles showing how between two poles it's going to wait till you see some of these. They're pretty interesting. How about that? You think that's cool? I do. Let's see what else he's got going here. Oh, Metatron.
So what I've got here is a three-twist loop, which I'm now going to cut in half. And so if you have not seen this before, see if you can have a guess what will happen if I cut right down the center of a three-twist loop. If you have seen it before, no spoilers, keep it to yourself. And I find very few people can just guess. I mean, obviously, if you're familiar with this, you'll know what's about to happen. But guessing this from nothing is very difficult. So I'm right back to where I started. I've got like a tangled mess of paper. And if I cut it, I don't get two pieces of paper. So obviously there are other surfaces, if I fold the way through them, I get two pieces of paper. This particular closed loop I've done, I don't get two bits, I get one bit. But now there is a knot tied in that loop, right? So I went from a piece of paper with no knots tied in it, and then by cutting it in half, I got a piece of paper with a knot, right? When I first saw that, that really freaked me out. And this is the trefoil knot that I think Robert referenced earlier, which can be embedded on the surface of a torus. So there's the torus knot, and before I started cutting, the edge of a three-twist Mobius loop forms a trefoil knot. So by cutting it down the center, I end up with a bit of paper. Now the surface forms that same knot, so I get the knot there. And there's a whole area of math where you're looking at or a cube in 3D, right? And I could use soap film to show me some of the minimal possible surfaces which would fill something like this. The issue is something like this is not going to fit. Right? So if you want to try this yourself afterwards, you need to get a container big enough that you can completely fill it with bubble solution to get something like this in, which I may have done. Okay, so it won't even happen this time. Give it a go. Okay, so can you pop that bit in the middle? Now, okay, so now you stand there awkwardly. Okay, so you can see, wow, you've done that literally. Okay, so you can see as I move these apart, it forms the minimal surface. It's not a cylinder, it curls in. It's got the catenary, well, a catenoid, I guess, shape. And actually, if we go to the overhead, oh my goodness. Now it's multimedia. Okay, so you can see there. But as was mentioned before, if you start to move these apart, it won't just form an incredibly, there it goes. It won't form, okay, 2 in a row. Okay, it won't form an incredibly thin tube. There's a point where the minimal surface, whoop, it flips across and you get the 2 flat surfaces. So there's a ratio, which actually I'm not sure, nearly. I'm not sure what it is, where or is there some optimal ratio for the size of that square? I imagine if you've done a bit of calculus, you can probably set that up. I haven't done it, so maybe this is a terrible suggestion. Don't do it. It's a world of pain. But it feels like you should be able to set up some equations reasonably easy and to work out what size square gives you the minimal surface area of those.
Well, I could see myself getting.
Well, give it a go. Give it a go. But don't blame me.
Now, what microphone is working here? I need to do a check. Hola, hola. Hate to do this, but I need to check what audio I'm using. One second here. All right, let me try again. Testing. Well, I don't know if you're going to notice any, yeah, yours. I was showing some of those videos before we get warmed up here, man. We got to get warmed up. Close the share. Un momento. Well, there's somebody spending time with bubbles. Let's see what we got here. I want to see if there's Tommy was just showing me a new one from Divergent. And you know what? We're warming up the show. Let's see what he's got going here.
I'm just going to read the first and second book review that comes in the third book of Lives of Cosmos. Links down below. This is for those people who don't have the possibilities or the money or the technical abilities. And it's really awesome information because it's sweet, to the point, simple, and short. So, first of all, the moon. Again, this is seen in the first and second book, which you can buy digitally from the same online shop. The moon is a focused plasma.
You know, I want to show the one that Tommy was just showing me. And that one looks interesting. You know, I've shown this guy before. he doesn't come, he's not looking to sell Christianity, and that's too bad. But he definitely is digging up. Now, where was this one? It was just it was about electric cars, flying cars I just saw. Just let me have one more second, because I know you're going to love this one.
Month of April, year 1904, 1904. St. Louis in the USA opened the doors to the world for what was officially called back then the Louisiana Purchase Expedition, widely known to the public now as the St. Louis World's Fair. Millions of dollars, according to official history, spent to build. They say they built all those buildings then in 1904. They built 1,200 acres of fairgrounds and almost 1,500 buildings. That's what the history said. They built all of that in 1904 with the capacities of that humanity before the First World War. Huge scale that ended up delaying the opening by a year, and it was an 8-month opening, so only for 8 months the fair stayed open. There were approximately 20 million people from all over the world that paid a visit. Displays of marvels of technology, agriculture, art, and history, also amusement rides and entertainment in a section called the Pike. And this fair introduced a huge amount of new.
Now, I know that you don't want to see me interrupting it, but I know that there's one called This One Changes Everything, and that it had a picture of a building in it.
They say a picture, a photo is worth more than 1,000 words. Let's see, So this is like what we have under our skin, the way when we see the muscles and all that stuff. And you've been to biology class.
This is not the one.
People call them natural wonders of nature. Is it? But let's dive deep into giants and resets and all that stuff. Furthermore, the veins of the human body, and then also the blood has water as well. And you see the world from above, and you see the veins, like the rivers of Mother Earth, they call it, right? Let's go. Typical stuff you see under a microscope, like the fibers or like whatever we have in the bodies and stuff like that. Not just us, but like any like living plant or living being. And then the typical stuff that they call these like all the hexagonal shapes, be it the Devil Tower or the Giant Causeway or the hundreds and thousands of places in this world, because this world is covered in all this. And they say, oh, it's lava from volcano that formed hexagonal shapes while going against gravity on a ball spinning in space with curved water. Hey, I'm just saying, living beings have hexagonal shapes, fibers, especially giant trees. And then you have this thing with the bones, normal bones, and then you have like that osteoporosis, when you have like, you get like big holes in bones and bones get destroyed. And then you've seen this, I've seen it as well in the world, places like rocks and stuff with the same like shape. So I don't know if it's a coincidence or it's like water and wind across millions of years in this globe spinning in space with curved water, and that's the effect. Hey, I'm not saying it's not possible, but there's so many like.
I still don't think that's the one I was looking for. This one will change the way you think. It was 21 minutes, I thought. Well, otherwise, we're just going to go back. But he had a picture of a building where you could tell they added an M. They just engraved an M to make it read in Roman numerals the extra 1,000 years. Hate to pass up some of these that look pretty good. But we're going to be doing Bible mostly tonight. One more.
Month of April, year 1904. 1904. St. Louis in the USA opened the doors to the world for what was officially called back then the Louisiana Purchase Exposition, widely known to the public now as the St. Louis World's Fair. Millions of dollars, according to official history, spent to build. They say they built all those buildings then in 1904. They built 1,200 acres of fairgrounds and almost 1,500 buildings. That's what the history said. They built all of that in 1904 with the capacities of that humanity before the First World War. Huge scale that ended up delaying the opening by a year, and it was an 8-month opening, so only for 8 months the fair stayed open. There were approximately 20 million people from all over the world that paid a visit. Displays of marvels of technology, agriculture, art, and history, also amusement rides and entertainment in a section called the Pike. And this fair introduced a huge amount of new inventions, supreme stuff like automobiles, outdoor electric lighting, also electric motors. Everything was electric. The X-ray machines, the incubators, lots of stuff, and foods from across the USA and around the world. So the exposition also had a focus on anthropological exhibits. So they showed people. They brought primitive people from the Philippines and the Arctic and other places in the world, as using them as fairgrounds or set pieces among recreations of their home environment. So they created villages inside the expo, bringing actual people, primitive people from there, like Philippines and the Arctic and the Amazon and Africa, for the white people to actually admire them as if you are going to a zoo to see animals. And after the fair closed, all of the buildings and the structures were demolished within a short time, and that's it. It's the end of that. So they're saying that they spent millions of dollars in 1904 to build all this from scratch. It was open for 8 months. They showed a huge amount of technology and electromagnetic and all that stuff. And then they just demolish everything, they destroy everything, because that's what that human race was doing. The human race of 1904, they spend millions of dollars for building all that, and then they destroy everything. And then instead of us having the beauty of the technology of electric motors and all that stuff in the 20th century, we have to be slaves of financial debt and use the petrol motor and all that stuff. Besides the fact that they say, oh, those buildings were actually built with like plaster and wood and primitive techniques and so.
If anybody's here, do you think that's like what is that, a solar panel, an observatory? What do you think they try to, what is that? If anybody knows, I'm not sure. But it looks like a death ray.
The fact that they say, oh, they're actually built like that. With plaster and all that stuff. So, and if I say something like, oh, that's from a different humanity, that was built by a different humanity, something happened in the world, there was a cataclysm, and then our humanity, which we have no clue where we're coming from, probably were just the genetic experiments created in the lab. We came, and then, of course, the people who now are like ruling the world, they just destroyed everything, and they made their own rules, and they gathered all the information and technology, and they destroyed all the buildings and stuff. But if I say that, people are just going to call me crazy conspiracy theorist.
I say that all the time.
I'm just saying, if you actually believe that there was huge, and that's only one fair. St. Louis, it's the same as with Chicago and New York and Panama Pacific and San Francisco and a bunch of them. in the world. Same stuff everywhere. Within each person, each individual is welcome to believe whatever they want, whatever makes them happy in their corner. I only saw, so for the very first time when I saw those pictures, instantly in my mind, the first thought in my mind was that belonged to a different humanity, and our human species just came along, referring to people of the 19th century, and the first people. That's why all the big families, they go back all the way to the late 1900s, to the late 1800s, because they were the first people to come after that cataclysm. So they took everything in their power, they destroyed everything that they didn't want others to see, or they saved it, like the Smithsonian and stuff. And now you and I, we were born like in the 20th century and stuff. We're just like, if you want something, you have to go into financial debt, because that's what the world works. Sad, but the ugly truth. I will see you guys in the next video.
I enjoy his videos. Oops, just took myself off. I need to show you a video I left a comment on, because I don't want it to be, for me, it's getting hard to believe that this is such a big movement and people don't even have any idea where it really started or who started it. Not that it really matters, but I think it's a good object lesson of why, of what a good job they do on algorithms of who sees what. Because if there are people right now, and this person made a video and it got featured by John Levy. And I've been watching, I went and watched it and been watching it ever since. So I made a video last night, thought I'd check it out because he's not bad. He's trying hard. I think he's trying a little too hard. And I'm real close to it right now. And I want your honest opinions and stuff, and maybe we'll go over. I want to open this one up too. Man, don't tell me I'm not going to be able to find that one either. This is getting so old. Well, here's the one I wanted to show you on this one. You guys don't know, it's very frustrating. But this is something I wanted to show you too. World War II weapons used in the Ukraine war. Now, it's not just one or two, because our countries like to show some of the new modern things they've done, like the commercials with General Dynamics. But they're basically showing that, Ukraine had, they had 300,000 of these in store since World War II.
Pistol is in widespread usage today, with Ukraine having a large stock of this World War II vintage weapon in storage at the start of the campaign. Entering service in the Soviet Union in 1930. In 1952, the TT-33 was...
and basically, wait till you see what they're, look, it works. So that's really all they care. They show them using them in World War II. These are those, cheaply manufactured.
The 45, it fires the same round as the Tokarev pistol and shares a superficial resemblance to the more famous PPSH-41, also in use in some Ukraine.
Yeah, they're using the same weapons, all stored since the war.
Replaced by the post-war SKS and then the AK-47 rifles. However, it was reported in 2008 that Ukraine had 11,500 SVT-40s in storage. The 7/30 rifle is in service in Ukraine at present, alongside the more updated Mosin-Nagant 44 carbine.
That's from 1891, and that Mosin-Nagant, isn't that what they say Lee Harvey used when he was being the patsy? What's going on around here? And then I see that's not it. These fleets, you know, how many of these ships that the United States has in storage, and they, 4.5 mile long of old ships. Just slowly junking them. If you remember the other night, we talked about how they couldn't even keep up with the torpedoes. They only made 200 torpedoes a year. 250 torpedoes a year. This is what they expect you to think. They'll be happy when they get this from you.
Fragments of triumphant phrases push themselves through the din. Vast strategic maneuver, perfect coordination, utter rout, 500,000 prisoners, complete demoralization, control of the whole of Africa, bring the war within measurable distance of its end, victory, greatest victory in human history, victory, victory, victory. Under the table, Winston's feet made convulsive movements. He had not stirred from his seat, but in his mind he was running, swiftly running. He was with the crowds outside, cheering himself dead. He looked up again at the portrait of Big Brother, the colossus that bestrode the world, the rock against which the hordes of Asia dashed themselves in vain. He thought how 10 minutes ago, yes, only 10 minutes, there had still been equivocation in his heart as he wondered whether the news from the front would be of victory or defeat. It was more than a Eurasian army that had perished. Much had changed in him since that first day in the ministry of love. But the final, indispensable healing change had never happened until this moment. The voice from the telescreen was still pouring forth its tale of prisoners and booty and slaughter, but the shouting outside had died down a little. The waiters were turning back to their work. One of them approached with a gin bottle. Winston, sitting in a blissful dream, paid no attention as his glass was full up. He was not running or cheering any longer. He was back in the ministry of love, with everything forgiven, his soul white as snow. He was in the public dock, confessing everything, implicating everybody. He was walking down the white-tiled corridor with the feeling of walking in sunlight, and an armed guard at his back, the long hoped-for woman. Irrelevant. I don't care. In the end, if they scalp, a crooked nose, and battered-looking cheekbones, above which his eyes were fierce and watchful. The cheeks were seamed, the mouth had a drawn-in look. Certainly it was his own face, but it seemed to him that it had changed more than he had changed inside. The emotions it registered would be different from the ones he felt. He had gone partially bald. For the first moment he had thought that he had gone grey as well, but it was only the scalp that was grey. Except for his hands and the circle of his face, his body was grey all over with an ancient ingrained dirt. Here and there under the dirt, there was...
Well, anyway, that second part there was the guy from 1984, before, at the end, when he learned to love Big Brother. I'm just going to go ahead and be led by the Lord. What news is fake? Not all. So 1 point off the quiz I'll be having at the end of this sermon. So no quiz, that's me supplying your common memory of the pattern. What pattern? You're here to study the Bible, but you don't want it to be too boring. You want to show yourself approved, but you didn't sign up to get bored to death. So speakers warm up the crowd with the zingers like, there might be a quiz and taking a point off. So go ahead and chuckle. I know most preachers are not this funny. So cleansing breath. Jesus Christ and John the Baptist were cousins, but even in their youth, they were more famous than the Baldwin brothers or Justin Bieber or Miley Cyrus, who are fake news famous. But real things do happen that the world has to adjust for. Like right off the top of my head, I think that there is something. I don't think it's man-made climate change unless it's the few people at the top who are doing things and hiding it, not hiding it. But I do think that they're discovering things in the Arctic where we can't go. And I've been studying that, looking at it a little bit the last couple of days. And I really think it's going to be like, why didn't they want the rainforest? Don't cut down the rainforest, because they found canals and cities everywhere. Why, and it seems like, you scratch the surface, you break up, you try to fix a basement in Europe and you're finding a Roman bath, and now we find out they're everywhere in the world. But, there's fake news, there's real news, because real news has to be reacted to. You have to react it. And in my mind, I was making a big deal about that. Well, they are acting, and so they have to react to it so that they can show you how, it obviously means this to us. So, and as actors, of course, would they call that also spinning? Don't let a crisis grow to waste. Drunk driver kills the prom queen. Family of 8 killed by an illegal alien who got an illegal semi-truck driver's license from a Republican governor because he paid cash for it. Thank you, Illinois. But, it cuts along. There are no good guys left in this world. People had to react to the birth of John and Jesus. And I'd like to look up some verses, I'll just do it right now, because Lord willing, that'll be part of this deal here. So I want to keep that for sure, because we're going to be looking at that later, just not now. So I'm going to be looking up Luke. That's in the New Testament. That's real close. That's one of the 4 gospels that you always hear about. And it's a really long chapter. So I'm just going to spin all the way down to verse 65. And fear came upon all their neighbors, and all these things were talked about through all the hill country of Judea. How about that for them being famous? And all who heard them laid up their hearts, saying, what then will this child be? For the hand of the Lord was with him. And it gets like that for the Lord Jesus too. Let's look at Luke chapter 2, verses 10. Then that when Jesus was born, the angel said, fear not, for behold, I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. And this will be a sign for you, that you will find a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among those with whom he is pleased. Hallelujah. Let's look at chapter 3, verse 15. And the people were in expectation, and all were questioning in their hearts concerning John, whether he might be the Christ, and it was good news to all people. This was happening from the time they were born. We have to put those words in play. Now, is this a time for a interlude? Shepherd at the angels presented at the temple. Right when he was presented, he was announced as a light for the revelation to the Gentiles. And this was to a man who had been waiting a long time, a man named Simeon. And this man was righteous and devout, waiting for the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was upon him, with him. And it had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he would not see death before he had seen the Lord's Christ. And so, of course, he happened to be there. And that's when we get the wonderful news that the once exclusive God of the Hebrews is now fed up and moving on, as was his plan since he preached the gospel to Abraham, as we're taught in the New Testament. And then Mary, behold, this child is appointed for the fall and rising of many in Israel, and for a sign that is opposed, and a sword will pierce through your soul also, so that thoughts from many hearts may be revealed. Now, it's the sign to those opposed, so that thoughts from many hearts will be revealed. But Mary, who has been storing up all of these things in her heart, stored this up, obviously. And then there was another prophetess, Anna, daughter of Phanuel of the tribe of Asher. She was advanced in years. She had married young, and now she was old. She never, it says, unless, something pressing, she didn't depart from the temple, worshiping with fasting and prayer night and day. And she happened to be there also, one who God had been given a sign. And coming up at that very hour, she began to give thanks to God and speak of him to all who were waiting for the redemption of Israel. From the time he was born, there were people saying, here he is. Here he is. And so those words, I don't want to emotionally sway the way people think, mocking the common people, to pretend not to mock God. Some like mock turtle soup, other duck soupy sails us to death with some dork who never got picked for dodgeball, pointing a finger in your face, screeching, I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. People like that, and life in general, and the Bible has left me with only one thought continuously. I want to be a better slave. That's the same word as someone who serves Christ, a servant. My will to better serve. Prove to him, he adopted the the perfect person to love him forever with all of my heart and want to be a better slave. Someone sent by God told me about my master and then showed me in a book of Holy Scripture. So now I read the book and wait for words to prove to God and man that I want to be a better slave. I want to look into that, you know, the 12 years of the Reagan-Bush thing, 1980 to 1982. That was a big, big change in oil prices, energy, you name it. Abortion rights. It was a big, big time. Where to start and when. That's really all I had written. I was going to do write a sermon or something like that. We confess truth, announcing we confess truth by accepting truth, believe in heart, confess with mouth. No man knows the hour, because Jesus told them. And why? Because we should have learned something from this mafia run world and from reading the Bible. You don't tell anybody a secret like that, because what did the mafia guy said? 3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. I'm not saying God is going to do that, but how well did it do? How well did they do when Jesus told people, hey, go, don't tell them, about I cured you of this or that. They ran off going that's what Jesus did for me. You think he could really tell them the date or the hour? Now we understand that Jesus Christ is manifest God in the flesh from the Spirit, and the fullness of God dwelt in him. But I really do think that, we also realize that he was, a man before the resurrection. Did you hear about him walking through a lot of walls or just showing up in a room and telling you, hey, touch me in the side, we didn't get any of that walking through the walls or manifesting. We believe that he's still in the flesh, but something's different now. So, and we know that to maintain that humanity and that, it says, Jesus was a child, and then he eventually woke up to the fact he's God in the flesh. And by the time he was 12, he had hit the ground running. He was ready to go, but there had to be some sort of a process, a lot like us, which is why, I'll get off my mind a pet peeve right now. And that's, I accepted the Lord, or telling somebody, you have a chance right now to accept or reject the Lord. What's it going to be? Well, that makes it seem like a good work, and it seems like a wrong teaching, because, it's talking about being born again. And I've mentioned this before. When you were first born, because let's keep this analogy an analogy. When you were first born, did you get to accept or reject your parents? Or did you get to accept, well, I reject being born in the 15th century. No. It's 20th century for me, or 21st century. Or maybe you want to be a Viking, and say, I want to go back to the 700 AD, using their calendar. You didn't get to make those choices. And Jesus said, to understand him, you must be born of the Spirit. And he said, that's the analogy. And Nicodemus went right to the, back in my mom's womb thing? No. It's an analogy the same way. Nicodemus, did you the first time? No, you may have been the fastest swimmer. And there's some proof that, right, about 50% of the time, at least in the, sperm world, boys swim as fast as girls. It's about 50-50, right? Where was I going with that? I wish I didn't have thought of that now. That's where we're at. Is doing a pet peeve, finishing up. And I was showing the one video about the old weapons. But here's a look at this. Do you see two circles? Now, are these moving in a circle? Try to watch where the I'm showing you it first. Doesn't it kind of look like a circle? But if you stay with one, all circles are a series of straight lines, and it's not really moving. It's just going back and forth between the same place. So that's how that works. I thought that was interesting. And now, let's see, we are sharing. I do want to say hello to Chris, Yoris, Matt G. How you guys doing? Looks like there's more people lurking than chatting. I want to say hello to Seven Head. It's working good. Oh boy. Right. I had a little problem with the microphone at first. We're back now. So Jonathan Click, you guys heard of him? People always, these kind of guys, because we really are, at an end time. And, Mudflood was Armageddon. That's what this all is all about. It's all about the Bible's true. And I understand. You think I don't know things are getting weird right now? You got me looking at, were there titans? And the Elohims and everything else. I mean, times are getting weird. And now one of the guys, that I really like, Dr. Heiser, and, but we have a few differences, but that's going to be natural. But he does a good job of pointing out this guy, Jonathan Click. And people used to always say, go check him out, check him out. I could for about like 5-10 minutes, I could see what it's going. It'd be like watching I can't even remember his name now, but he was from Australia. And of course, he was like the Jamie Lee of Australia. Oh, yeah, blimey, it's all mud flooded, hitting its Atlantis, and it's all about New Age and love. And Christians don't know how to love. We know how to love. Let's go to Burning Man. Yay! So I'll drop something in the link into the chat room if anybody wants to come in here and say, here would be a better idea for your show tonight. You seem kind of tired, Alan. I am tired mentally and physically, if you don't mind. Ah! Jonathan Click, knucklehead extraordinaire.
Brainwashing step 1. Repeat your message in as many ways as possible, as many times as possible, while still avoiding detection. Why do you think you hear the same commercial over and over again? It's not because they're trying to make sure everyone hears it, it's because they know that you need to hear the message repeatedly until it gets into your head.
But you can't just go read the word God and think you know what's going on. Can't do it. You got to look up the definitions, and that's what the Lord told me to do for y'all.
Brainwashing step 2 includes subliminal messages in it
From her husband, Adam, his twin.
So you see, he's using the extra Bible, what they, the faux Tanakh. We'll let Dr. Heiser explain that to you. I must have been bored and looking at another one. Where is that one? Man, I am getting so upset with myself. I have a good idea to join a club and beat myself over the head with it. No, I'm just kidding. Here it is.
Brainwashing step one.
That was the one. I guess Dr. Heiser comes in later. Yeah, there he is. I want to hear him.
About 3-2-1 to show the believers the world is stranger than we think, but thinking should not be strange. Now, odds are pretty high that all of you have heard of Adam and Eve. You may also have heard of their first two sons, Cain and Abel. Genesis 4, the first two verses, is pretty clear about this. It reads as follows. Now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again, she bore his brother Abel. Now let's think about those two verses just for a moment. Adam knew Eve, his wife. To know a woman in biblical language is to have sexual relations. The word know is sort of a euphemism for sex in the Old Testament. So Adam knows Eve, she conceives, and bears Cain. Sounds pretty simple and straightforward. Cain, of course, was the first person murdered in the biblical story of the early earth. He killed his brother Abel, so things didn't go too well. And you would think, this is a pretty straightforward accounting. Adam and Eve have two kids, they're boys, Cain and Abel, and again, things go bad. But of course, when it comes to the wacky world of fringe Bible beliefs on the internet, nothing this straightforward can actually be this easy. Believe it or not, there are some who believe that Adam was not Cain's father, but instead Cain was fathered by the serpent in the Garden of Eden, Satan. And they even use the verses I just read to prove that idea. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, I didn't hear Satan in the verse. Where does Satan come in? How in the world do we get this idea? Well, stay tuned.
Right. Now, stay tuned. I'm so happy I found the right video. Now, here was my problem. When all of these people were telling me about the serpent seed, this and that, and they were saying, go check it out, go check it out. And I was looking in the Bible and there's nothing about it, nothing. The words, they are not there. And now I realize they're using that extra Bible thing. It's not really Torah, Matt. He explains it, but that when those guys are talking about the Tanakh and the Torah and stuff, we got to be careful because I think they're trying to trick us.
Folks get this idea that Cain was not fathered by Adam, but instead was fathered by the serpent in Eden. The idea is called the serpent seed theory, and it's popular with certain anti-Semitic groups. There are basically three trajectories to constructing the idea. First, it has to be established that Cain's father was not the man Adam, but was instead a divine being. And there's a grammatical ambiguity in the Hebrew text of Genesis 4:1 that's used to argue this point. Take a look at this picture of the Hebrew text of Genesis 4:1 with English translation. You'll notice that there's a small two-letter word in a red box. The two letters are Aleph and Tav, and the Hebrew word here is et. Now, this little two-letter word can be understood in one of two ways. First, it can be viewed as a particle. It's called the accusative marker by Hebrew grammarians, and it marks the direct object of a verb. Now, the English translator in our sample took the word that way. The particle marks.
Man, you know what? Let's hear it one more time. This time I'll be more witty. Well, I'll just warm you up. Accusative term. Before you accusative term me, you better look at yourself.
It's called the accusative marker by Hebrew grammarians, and it marks the direct object of a verb. Now, the English translator in our sample took the word that way. The particle marks the direct object of two verbs, conceived and gave birth. It therefore identifies Cain as the child who was conceived in Eve and to whom she gave birth. Cain is the direct object of those verbs. Consequently, the marker receives no translation in our example. Now, the same two-letter word appears later in the verse in the green box. An alternative option is that the two-letter word could be a preposition that means with, as in accompaniment, she went with me, or assistance, I completed the task with a computer. The interpretive issue for our consideration is whether the two-letter word in Genesis 4:1 in the green box is an object marker like the first one, or this preposition. If what we see here is a preposition, the verse would read, I have conceived and given birth to a man with the Lord. The word Lord there is the divine name Yahweh. A serpent seed theorist used this alternative to separate Cain from Adam in terms of parentage. They know that Yahweh was not Satan, of course, so the goal of this argument is simply to plant the suggestion that Adam was not Cain's father because Eve got him with the Lord, or with the help of the Lord, a divine being. So to get his father as Satan, to move beyond this first argument, requires a few different things. There are two other arguments to this. So after planting the suggestion that Adam was not Cain's father, that maybe Eve got him through a divine being, the serpent seed theorists moved to a second trajectory. The content of what an ancient Targum, the Targum is an Aramaic translation of the Hebrew Old Testament, what that Aramaic translation says in Genesis 4:1. And the Targum I'm talking about specifically is Targum Pseudo-Jonathan, which says this: Adam knew his wife Eve, who had conceived from Samael, the angel of the Lord. This Aramaic translation adds an interesting note to this in the next verse. Then, from Adam, her husband, she bore his twin sister and Abel. The ancient Targum clearly adds details not found in the Hebrew Old Testament that underlie our modern English translations. Cain's father is said to be Samael, the angel of the Lord. Now, this translation in the Aramaic Targum has no basis in any Hebrew manuscript of Genesis. It's entirely contrived. It's
Tenacious D, stop it.
The same Targum identified him earlier in Genesis 3:6, the account of Eve's temptation by the serpent, Satan. Now, look at verses 4 and 5 in this Targum. We read this. At that moment, the serpent spoke slander against his creator and said to the woman, you shall not die, but every craftsman hates his fellow craftsman. For it is manifest before the Lord that on the day on which you eat of it, you shall be like the great angels who are able to distinguish good from evil. And the woman saw Samael, the angel of death, and she was afraid. To our eye, this Samael figure could be understood as a figure in the garden distinct from the serpent. But serpent seed theorists don't look at it that way. They want Samael to be the serpent. When Eve saw Samael, the angel of death, we are told that she's looking at the serpent who is speaking to her. And it's at this point that serpent seed believers are going to argue that, well, in Genesis 4, Eve conceived Cain with Samael. And if Samael is Satan, the serpent in Genesis 3, there you go. You have Cain being fathered by the serpent. Now, beyond that, serpent seed theorists add another thought. They go to Genesis 5:3 from the same Aramaic Targum to bolster their notion to this point, which reads this: when Adam had lived 130 years, he begot Seth, who resembled his image and likeness. For before that, Eve had borne Cain, who was not from him and who did not resemble him. And this wording denies that Cain was from Adam. Cain was not from him and did not resemble him. The father of Seth was Adam, who resembled his father, but that wasn't true about Cain. The modern English translation is based on the Hebrew text of the Old Testament, not Aramaic. In Genesis 5:3, believe it or not, appear to convey a similar idea with a different wording. It reads as follows: when Adam had lived 130 years, he fathered a son in his own likeness, after his image, and named him Seth. Now, even though there's no editorial comment about Cain not being like Adam, we don't get any information in Genesis 5:3 about Cain, and so we have an argument from omission. The point is that in Genesis 5:3, Seth is described as being in Adam's own lineage and likeness, But back in Genesis 4:1, Cain was not described that way. Remember what it says? Now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain. There's no reference to being in the image and likeness of Adam. Now this implies, so the theory goes, that Cain had a different father, and that father was the serpent, Samael, according to this Targum. This brings us to the last trajectory upon which the serpent seed idea is based. The New Testament is now brought into the discussion to suggest that Cain was born of unnatural means. The presumed evidence is 1 John 3:11 and 12, at least the first part of verse 12. It reads as follows: "For this is the message that you have heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. We should not be like Cain, who was of the evil one and murdered his brother." The question of Cain's origins arises from the phrase, "who was of the evil one." Now, serpent seed theorists consider this wording a reference to Cain's satanic parentage. Then they take us to John 8:44, which says, "You are of your father, the devil," to argue that Jews are also from the line of Cain, because that's who Jesus was talking to in John 8:44. You are of your father, the devil. This in turn requires that they prove Jesus was not a Jew, since Jesus is the one excoriating the Pharisees in that verse. This is why the serpent seed theory is an idea favored by anti-Semites. Now, our focus here is just Cain. In a future Fringe Pop episode, we will tackle the whole idea of how do you get Jesus not be a Jew. But for the moment, let's just stay focused on the issue of Cain being fathered by the serpent. Is this reconstruction that I've just given you coherent? Well, let's find out. Now, to this point in our episode, we've examined three trajectories designed to get us to read the simple statement of Genesis 4:1 that Adam fathered Cain in a totally different way to demonize, literally, the Jews. Now, regarding the first two trajectories, that Cain was not fathered by Adam, we read Genesis 4:1 as Eve saying she had gotten a man with the help of, or with Yahweh. That's a perfectly acceptable idea, perfectly acceptable translation, and does not undo Adam's parentage of Cain. Nowhere in the Hebrew text is there any hint that Yahweh is Samael or Satan or anyone else but himself, Yahweh. So to conceive a child with the help of the Lord doesn't necessarily point to an alternative father besides Adam. The idea is fabricated in the Targum. The Targum just inserts the idea in these verses and the other ones that we read.
Yeah, man, I agree with you, Rich. Was he getting paid by the minute? I know he's making a lot of cash. Look at that studio.
His wife. There's no ambiguity there. And if we take, again, that phrase, with the help of the Lord, it doesn't mean that Eve had
He's
sex
still
with
going
God or
at
any other
Rich, he's still going at it. I should have listened to Tenacious D.
You might say, well, what about 1 John 3:11 and 12? I mean, that sounded convincing, maybe. Let me read it to you again. "For this is the message that you have heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. We should not be like Cain, who was of the evil one and murdered his brother." And not surprisingly, the serpent seed view of these verses bites the dust when you don't.
Now, one of the things in this portion, if we can bear with this, excuse me. I drank a beer with Tommy after we did all that hard work. And the thing that I find very interesting when I watched this, because I sat through it, as he kept repeating the same thing, man, Rich, 4 times. I tried to get away from it. I popped on number 4. We might have skipped 5. But he didn't mention 1 John 3:10b, the second half of that verse, that the reason Christ appeared, to them, because he's writing in the book of whatever first book I just said, 1 John, that he came. So, and the Satan showed up ready to sin. So we're told, it seems to imply that there was sin in heaven before there was sin on earth. And he leaves that out. And to me, where the Spirit is leading me, that's a big deal. So why didn't you make it a big deal, Dr. Heiser?
The serpent seed view of these verses bites the dust when you don't rip these verses from their context. Let's look at verse 10. "By this it is evident who are the children of God and who are the children of the devil. Whoever does not practice righteousness is not of God, nor is the one who does not love.
Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to show you, because he's making it be like, he put close quotes on it and he didn't show that that verse had not ended. Oh, I'm thinking of verse 8. We're going to have to go back and see if he mentions 8, because I knew that there was one of the verses. So that now, oh no. This is one of those, these are those times that Tommy warns me about. Hey, look who's here, everybody. You're not going to believe what I've got planned for you, Aaron. I hope you think it's funny. But he didn't mention the second half of the verse, I don't think. Or let's listen a little bit more. So I'm going to back it up to where he's going to get into this.
Anki in the Atrahasis epic never have sexual relations in that story. The meaning of what she says is clear. She's simply crediting Anki with superior power and ability to create human life. And that's all that Eve is doing. Now you might say, well, what about 1 John 3, 11 and 12? That sounded convincing, maybe. Let me read it to you again. For this is the message that you have heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. We should not be like Cain, who was of the evil one and murdered his brother. And not surprisingly, the serpent's seed view of these verses bites the dust when you don't rip these verses from their context. Let's look at verse 10. By this it is evident who are the children of God and who are the children of the devil. Whoever does not practice righteousness is not of God, nor is the one who does not love his brother. If you go to verse 15, again in the same chapter, verse 15 states in more general terms that, quote, everyone who hates his brother is a murderer, unquote, like Cain. So by serpent seed logic, every follower of Jesus would have to literally be spawned by God, and everyone who sins was literally fathered by Satan, as well as anybody who hates anyone else. That means the devil is literally your father. Again, serpent seed, remember what you know.
Hey, check this guy out, Jonathan Click. I think he's goofy.
We're all falling. You got linked up with the superhuman angel. This up. Hell yeah.
Weird, man. That's weird. Well, will you still love me after this? Where's that one at? Huh. Well, I have to set it back up. Oh, don't you worry one little bit. If you think, will this be worth it? Oh, man, you're going to be thinking, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. There's one, that mothball fleet. That's pretty cool. Many times now, baby. You know what? We're going to do this one here in honor of Aaron's old website named In Camp Saints. Here's a song that kicks the butt. It's brand new. All right, yeah, and that you mentioned that great white throne thing too. We're not supposed to forget about that. Man, that's some good stuff, huh? Hey, let's go full rabbit trail tonight, because while we were writing here, or while we were sitting here, I wrote down here salt mines in Connecticut. Okay. Let's check it out. We'll look for first before we have to break any laws. We might have to, we might not. Ooh, a mind-blowing gemstone. Ooh, thorium. What? What? All we wanted to find out about was Connecticut salt mines. Don't you have any salt mines there? Huh. We better look at this one.
There is an old legend that here on this hill, in the years just prior to the Revolutionary War, a man named David Tallman obtained much wealth in the form of rich copper ore, blasted from tunnels that run deep underground. But the mine has all but vanished, and the ring of hammer against drill steel has been replaced with an eerie silence. As late afternoon light streams through the beech trees and tall oaks that shroud the hill, a piece of bright green copper is illuminated. A reminder that the closer you look, the more you see. Can the Tallman copper mine still be found? What could we learn by illuminating the perpetual darkness of its tunnels? What stories would be revealed by stepping back to another time?
It's always going to be something weird, right? Oh yeah, that looks like a cistern.
With murky brown water that comes up to our waist. Slowly, we move forward into the blackness and back in time.
Oops.
We move forward into the blackness and back in time. That extends only 15 feet. The point they exhausted all the time and money they were willing to expend. The point where they gave up. A profit may have well been made from the hill, but it was not likely as fantastic as local legends make it out to be.
Being pinched out here, and it just wasn't profitable enough to mine. They went as far as they can.
My baby.
All right, we're talking about America BC. In the last program, I pointed out to you that there are more than 3,000 sites here in the United States of America that we have discovered, that we have found monuments, writings, coins, Egyptian hieroglyphics, Irish ogham writing, Phoenician coins, Roman pottery, Norse burial mounds, and they've been found in numerous states. Not something that you found, say, in New York State or up in Massachusetts, but they've been found all over the United States. From New Mexico to West Virginia, from New Hampshire and Vermont to Georgia, Michigan, southern Canada, all over Central and South America, Brazil. In fact, Brazil, the word Brazil is a Hebrew word that means iron land. King Solomon had trading ships bringing iron ore into Elath in southern Israel. They found a blast furnace down there, the remnants, an ancient remnant of an oxygen-fired blast furnace, something that we didn't discover until nearly the 20th century here in the United States. Now, this ancient technology that we are discovering, I'm going to give you a couple of more examples. For instance, off of Bimini, there is a city under 60 feet of water, streets fully laid out, stone buildings built. It should be pretty obvious that whoever built that city and whenever it was built, it wasn't built when there was 60 feet of water there. It had to have been built at a time when that water wasn't there, which means that the ocean level had to be down 60 feet or that portion of the crust sank 60 feet. Well, it could be one or the others, but I just wanted to point out, here's this ancient city here in the Americas, 60 feet underwater. Down in Peru, there is a number of peculiar.
Just so you know, these are not pictures of the pyramid in Japan that they're trying desperately to prove is not a pyramid underwater. This is one they're ignoring in South America.
Sites. Monkeys and spiders and other animals. I mean, when you're down here on the ground looking at these piles of rock, that when you get up in the air with an airplane, you can look down on it and see that it's a monkey, it's a spider, but you can't see it from the ground. Who built that and why? Who did it and when, and what was the purpose? There are walls, and one wall down in Peru has a stone in it. 50 tons is the estimated weight. It's an irregular stone. It isn't square. It isn't rectangular.
It's a body part.
It's an odd-shaped stone. It's just like a rock coming out of the river.
Unhewn.
And then with that rock, all the rocks around it are cut to fit it. That technology is not available in the world today, and as I speak in the year 2007, we cannot duplicate that wall today.
I could.
The pyramid of Giza, Egypt, is plus or minus a half an inch on its four corners. We couldn't measure it until 1964 with laser transit to determine how square it was. We knew.
Or maybe that's when our reset started, much like our 2001 reset that started the last 45 years. But I'm too tired for that tonight. We're just doing this stuff.
It was built pretty accurately. I mean, we measured it with tape measures. But a tape measure over 14 acres isn't that accurate. So with a laser transit, though, you can. And then we found out there are expansion joints. Who came up with the idea that heat expands stone and that cold contracts it, and that you would need expansion joints in a monument or in a building that large?
Wow, how is that even hard, though? That's not hard. I mean, a couple of years, you'll figure that out.
And without it, the stones would crack. Well, whoever built it knew it. And whoever built it had at least the technology of a laser transit of 1964. And there's one more here I wanted to point out to you. It's called metal workers. In Genesis chapter 4, verse 22, there is a report here of a story. Listen to this. It says, Zillah, she also bare Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. Now here's Genesis 4, shortly after the Garden of Eden. And these people are artificers in brass and iron. Now, when you went to school, did you hear about the Iron Age, the Copper Age, the Stone Age?
I did.
Did you hear about that?
Yeah.
And did you hear about the billions and billions of years? That's what I heard when I went to school. Did you hear about Columbus discovering America? And did you hear anything about those 7 or 8 pyramids out in Illinois? Did you hear about 3,000 archaeological sites in the United States with Egyptian hieroglyphics in them? Or with Irish ogham, Roman pottery, Norse burial mound? Did you hear about any of that? You know, our government and our public institutions, and when I say public institutions, I mean our corporations like General Motors, public institutions like our universities and colleges, you know, the public institutions like our libraries, they lie to us. Yes, our government and public institutions, they lie to us continually and constantly. They lie about economics. They lie about politics. They lie about war. How many lies have we been told over the past 4 years about the Iraq war? And that's by our president. Now, our congressmen and our senators, they stand up in the halls of our public institutions and reiterate the lies of our president that we now know are lies, and we know that they're lies because now we know that the president knew, and no senators and representatives knew or should have known that what they were doing at the time they did it was, in fact, wrong and a damn lie. I say damn lie because that's the way Mark Twain put it. He said there are lies, then there are damn lies, and then there's statistics. And then that takes us to the realm of science. They lie about economics, politics, war, the budget, diet, food, science, evolution, and they lie about archaeology. And that's the subject matter of this week's program. This takes us to a book called America BC. The guy that wrote it is a Harvard professor, like Immanuel Velikovsky. He's a contrarian, a contrary guy. Well, they call those guys an iconoclast. A guy who stands up and says, yeah, I heard about Columbus, but it's BS. It's BS. I think most of you people know what BS is. Besides Bachelor of Science, it's BS. And in the early 1970s, a group of us, this is Barry Fell speaking now in the epilogue, written in 1989. Now, he wrote this in 1989, nearly 20 years ago. He said, in the early 1970s, a group of us who were interested in ancient scripts used to meet occasionally at Harvard University to discuss the decipherment of what we believe to be ancient inscriptions. Out of these beginnings came the Epigraphic Society, formally inaugurated in 1974. And once our publications began to appear, the membership grew until now there are a dozen chapters in the United States and overseas. In this epilogue, some of the more interesting results of the Society's work are here presented. So I'm going to pause right here, make my little mark and margin. I like to read a book by first starting off with the table of contents, and then I go to the last chapter. In this case, it's the epilogue, so that I get the answer. So we'll start with the answer to the riddle. How's that? And in the epilogue,
you know what I like to do? I like to go to the appendixes, because the appendix is where they put the, oh man, I really wanted to add this.
I'm writing on it, and it's down in a little gully, and they've got, it's a state park. The state of Oklahoma is a state park. I never heard anything about it. I never read anything about that in any archaeological publications here in the United States. There is a wall of silence about these stories, about these archaeological finds of America BC, and there's a logical reason behind it. So let me share it with you. A lot of times people ask me questions like, why would the government do that? See, they can't believe it, number one. And so they come back in defense of the government because of their ignorance. See, all of us feel real bad when we find out we've been deceived, lied to. And so we have this belief system, and then when somebody challenges it, like Barry Fell, or somebody comes along and challenges FDR, but why would he do that? See?
Why are you referring to yourself in the third person? You are Barry Fell.
Well, there's a motivation behind it. The president lies to us about the war in Iraq for population or people control. That's the purpose behind it. They're in a program to create a one world government like we had.
Man, this guy is awesome. I was reading his book in the 80s. This must have been in the Arnold Schwarzkopf, General Shock and Awe. Shock and Awe. He just killed them all. I like him more now. He's Jewish too, and I still like him. His thoughts on this anyway.
Around the Tower of Babel. And the normal people of the world, the most of the people, the majority of the people, they don't want that. And so a minority of people have to enter into a conspiracy together to bring it to pass. The average American didn't want to go to war in 1938. So Franklin Roosevelt had to engineer foreign policy and the processes that work around us in international geopolitics to get the Japanese to attack us. Then we could stand up in righteous indignation and say, look what those nips did. and now we have to go to war. And the Japanese were actually responding to a 1937 policy in which the United States, along with Holland and a couple other countries in Europe, placed an embargo upon oil being exported from Indonesia to Japan. What would you think if a group of countries, let's say Russia, China, and Iran, got together and formed an embargo against the import of Middle East oil to the United States? I can assure you that war would be inevitable, and probably tomorrow morning, certainly within 90 days. It's just an inevitable result. So when I heard about that, and of course I didn't hear about that in public school, I got that from the underground press. And when I saw that, I said, well, I'm not surprised that the Japanese attacked the Americans at Pearl Harbor. I'm amazed that they waited 5 years. What took so long? It was an act of war when President Roosevelt did it in 1937. Why would they wait 5 years? Now, when we get over here to this epilogue in America, BC, the question arises, why would the archaeological world, the scientific world, want to hide these Egyptian hieroglyphics found in West Virginia? They want to hide them because it doesn't fit with the political agenda. It doesn't fit with the scientific agenda. It doesn't fit with evolution. Evolution is what we've been taught in this country. The Bible has been ridiculed and impugned and taken out of our public schools because it's unscientific. Okay, boys and girls, just what in the hell is scientific about hiding Egyptian hieroglyphics, Irish Ogham writing, and Phoenician coins found in burial sites in at least 9 states in America?
Make that 10.
Scientific about it. It is the antithesis of science. And that's just a god-awful bald truth of the matter. They're liars, frauds, and charlatans. Nothing more and nothing less. Now, occasionally, we get a little glimpse of reality from an insider. Now, this guy, Barry Fell, is one of the insiders. See, he's an archaeologist. He's a college professor. He's from Harvard. Harvard, as they say up in the Massachusetts area. Harvard. And so he's some...
Wait, this is some guy talking about Barry Fell? Cool, man.
Buddy that's got some credentials. Now, he went about this, very, very slow and very, very cautiously. Having seen what happened to Emmanuel Velikovsky, he didn't want to lose his job. And so, he kind of tiptoes around the tulips and tiptoes around the edges over here. He published this book back in 1976. Today, it is common knowledge. What he has reported in his book, America, BC, is common knowledge. It's not accepted because it's not politically correct. You carpenters, plumbers, electricians, and longshoremen are not going to hear this anyplace else. You're not going to get it in your public schools, and your children are not going to hear this in their public schools. They're going to hear about laying the neighbor girl in the back seat of their Chevy or something, but they're not going to hear about America, BC, because that would lead you to the Bible and Scripture. Now, I read to you the scripture a little earlier here about Genesis chapter 4, that they were artificers in brass and iron. Think about this for a second. When Columbus discovered America, they were casting cannon in sand. There were no turret lathes. There were no artificers in brass and iron in Columbus's time. They were not metal workers. They could cast cannon in sand. They could make spears, spear tips, and swords, but they could not make engines. They were not metallurgists. Now, here we have reported in ancient times, right after the Garden of Eden, artificers in brass and iron. Now, just take a look at the history of the world from Columbus to today. We went from casting cannon in sand to being able to make sheet steel to make ships, iron ships that float in the water. We learned how to make rivets and bore holes in steel. We learned how to make steel from iron. We have learned in 500 years how to make plates of steel by adding other elements to make them harder. We've learned how to make aluminum, and we've learned how to make brass from copper. We've learned how to use other base metals and make mixtures of metals in order to become artificers in brass and iron. We now have turret lathes and metalworking machines, and we can make automobiles and engines and airplanes, and we have a technology that can take us to the moon. or something else. But we can do that in 500 years. I want to remind you that from the Garden of Eden to the flood was 1,656 years. That's 3 times longer.
I want to check out some of this things now. This man I used to study Hebrew from, but he has kind of gone like white power. But there's something from like about 3 or 4 years ago. About Genesis that was really good. Oh, we're getting close now. Oh, hold on to your hats.
Hey everybody, it's 6:05 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, December 15, 2017, whatever. Let's see if we can get through this. I'm going off of information that I used in a video that I made a few weeks ago. As I mentioned when I made this video, it was the only time in a long time I had not done first an audio check to make sure that the software was picking up the signal from my mic, and thus the video was not even recorded. So if this is reaching you, it worked. If not, it doesn't matter. So we're going to talk about Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. We're not going to talk too much about Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2. Although it seems to me thus far that there is a lot that we could talk about. Now, in my last video, I talked to you about the ongoing struggle I'm having with determining the exact meanings of the first directional word used in the Bible, which would be Kedem. That is most commonly thought to be east, but yet it is used so often to mean more ancient or eternal things, and the book is not closed on that yet, but I have to get on to this. It has been taught to everyone that I know, if it doesn't matter, it really doesn't matter, I don't think, what sect of Christian faith you were brought up in or where you currently reside, you have been taught this idea that Genesis chapter 1 is describing to us a 6-day creation, and that in Genesis chapter 2, what we're seeing is a going back and further detailing of day number 6 and then forward. The only problem with that is nearly everything structurally in what's being expressed in Genesis chapter 1 and what's being expressed in Genesis chapter 2. So I'm going to do my best to try to help you understand what the issue is. So we got to go to, we've got to start in 1:11. All right. No, 1:9. And it says, and and I'm going to be reading again. This is mostly King James with Hebrew words added in wherever whoever designed this particular software decided that they should go. Specific Hebrew words. Reading this at Q Bible, the Hebrew translation portion of Q Bible, is helpful for the person who is trying to first acquaint themselves with the Hebrew. So Genesis 1:9. And Elohim said, let the waters under the heaven, Shemaim, be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And Elohim called the dry land earth, and the gathering together, the seas, the waters he called seas. Elohim saw that it was good. And 1:11, and Elohim said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. Now, thus far, I've found that these translations aren't terrible, but at the same time, they're not completely conveying, I believe, the description of what we see in the plant life. And as you get into the wording used and the characters within that wording, you'll see that some of these verses being translated into English may need to have been quite a bit longer to fully capture what's being communicated to us. So continuing on, and the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding after its kind, the tree yielding fruit, whose seed puts in itself after its kind. And Elohim saw that it was Tob, good. And the evening and morning were the third day. 1:14, and Elohim said, let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to divide the day from the night, signs, season, days, and years. Let them be for lights in the firmament, heaven, give the earth. It was so. And he made the stars also. He gave light upon the earth. The sun, it doesn't say sun, I'm sorry. One light for the day, one light for the night. He saw that it was good. Evening, morning, fourth day. Now, day 5. And remember, the only time we see a cardinal day is 1. The rest are ordinal days. They are listed as ordinal days. A second day, a third day, a fourth day. You can make what you want of that. But eventually,
I make a lot of that.
We will figure out why terms like that are being used. So in 1:20, and Elohim said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And Elohim created great whales and every living creature that moves, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after its kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. Elohim blessed them, saying, be fruitful, multiply, fill the waters and the seas, let the fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the 5th day. Now, just to clarify a few things before we move on, the translations of these animal lives, I think, are not good. Uwi Amar Elohim, Eish Ratzu E Maim, the waters, Sharatz, Napash. Thus far, teeming souls. Yeah, exists. And we got Oop. Eo Upap. So the whole thing about fowls, if you do a cross-reference search on this word 5775, Oop, And then right after that, Eopap, flying. Okay, flying. They are creatures. They are Napash.
They have souls. I stepped on him.
Souls. Ei, existing. Eopap, flying. They're flyers flying. And there are some translations I found that actually has that flyers flying. I'm trying to clarify that because when they say fowls, people instantly think of birds. Birds are not the only thing that can fly. We're just talking about things that have the ability to fly. They exist in a sense over, as this says, over the face of the Shamayim, which is what's typically translated as heaven or sky. Ma'im being the root waters. And then I haven't figured out the sh yet. That looks almost like a W that is called shin.
I think they're stars
today, depending on where the dot is. Anyways, so let's not get caught up in the fouls, okay? But more than that, what we're going to see in 120, 121, 122, we're seeing flying things and things teeming in the waters. And then we also take just a minute to look at the Thuninum, which a lot of them say whales, a lot of them say sea monsters. Yeah, I think that what we're talking about is the creatures in the sea which exist to this day, which are great, terrible creatures that he made, he describes later in the word, specifically for the waters, one of them being Leviathan. So that's what we've got going on here. And it's the fifth day. And then if we pick up in 124, and Elohim said, let the earth bring forth the living creature. Now this is earth, Aretz. This is all Aretz. We're seeing all Aretz. Now, yes, we do see Adma one time in all this, and I'll show you, okay? Because we want to keep track of these things. They're important because they're not the same. If they were the same, they'd have the same characters, they'd be the same word, and they'd be said in the same context. So they're not the same. And in 124, Elohim said, let Aretz bring forth the living creature. That would be Napash Hiya. Napash Hiya. If you see Napash He, Napash He, soul, live, soul, living, soul, life. All of these animals are described as Napashi, just like Adam. Not just the Adam, Adam.
Isn't that cool how it's tying into what I'm thinking now that, you know, it didn't have to be they mated with angels. It was just basically maybe there were titans ruling over, like, hey, don't mate with the Cro-Magnons. Don't mate with the Neanderthals. Don't mate with the Denisovians or the Hobbits. Just don't do it. Hey, a new comment. Cool, huh?
Described as Napashi. Bring forth the living creature after its kind. Cattle, which is Bema, I have no idea. And they can't stay consistent with cattle, by the way, as Bema. And creeping thing, you can prove this stuff for yourself.
But we can try to stay consistent. Don't just act like that's nothing.
Mosh. And beast of the earth after its kind, and it was so. And Elohim made the beast of the earth, Aretz, after its kind, and cattle, Bema, after their kind, and everything that creep, Ramash upon our...
Do you ever wonder if those animals, because, you know, he's going to get into what I teach about the second chapter of Genesis, that we're different. whether he knows it or not. I'm going to steer it that way. And, you know, who wonders if they could talk in the, you know?
Now, this is the one time you will see Adma, Ramash, on the soil. See, the soil, excuse me, the Adma is not Eretz. After his kind, and Elohim saw that it was Tob, good. And Elohim said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea. So we're going back to the word for teeming, because dag, which is used later for, let's see, right here, Dagath, sorry, there's Dagath. So it's teeming, you got Dagah, of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, over all the and arets. Now, stick with me here. There's a reason I'm actually going through all these things and telling you what these words are. All right, it's all going somewhere. The creeping things, so it's Ramash, upon the earth. Oftentimes the verb form and the noun form are virtually the same, with sometimes different prefixes or suffixes. See, you got something that's Ramash, and then the Masoretes just came along and said, well, in this instance, it should be pronounced Ramash, and in that instance, it should be pronounced Ramesh, because they said so. Now, so Elohim created man in his own image. In the image of Elohim created him, male and female created he them. And Elohim blessed them, and Elohim said to them, be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth, subdue it, have dominion over the fish, is Dega, of the sea, and over the Oop of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. So man, it does say Adam, that is the Hebrew word for man. Anyone who is a man can be called Adam. So he tells them to have dominion over all. Adam is the Napashi that was made to have dominion on the earth. And Elohim said, behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree in which there is a fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat, and to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creeps upon the earth wherein there is life. I've given every green herb for meat. And it was so. And Elohim saw everything that he made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. Now, if you go to Genesis chapter 2, first it describes the rest of Elohim. Then, about Genesis 2:4, we see first the name Yahweh appear. And it starts out, and it says, now, these are the generations, the Fulade of the heavens and the earth when they were created, in the day that Yahweh, Elohim, made the earth and the heavens. Now, here's where the English starts to confuse people. And every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew, for Yahweh, Elohim, had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. Stop. Ask questions. First off, herb of the field. We're going to start in Genesis 2:5, seeing this word Shaddai. We have not seen Shaddai in Genesis 1. Now, Oshab, and we may see one other. We have, so Oshab Shaddai, and this is what eSword is great for. So we can take that and we can start cross-referencing these things. Genesis, geez, I just punched in that, Oshab. It's not in Genesis 1, it's here. It first appears in Genesis 2:5, and every Oshab Shaddai. Wait a minute. I thought he made all of that stuff in Genesis 1. Let me go back here, because now I feel confused. Oh, here we go. This has got to be it, right? Geez. So we're in right here. Before the lights are made, right? We've got all of this stuff. So we've got, this is the Shah. I see. Oshab, got the Shah and Oshab. They translate it as grass and herb, the Shah and Oshab. Okay, and then we go back to 2:5. Shia. Is that right? Shia? Let's try cross-reference again. Oh, yeah, that's right. Shia. And here it is again. We see it in 21:15 when, what's her name?
Hagar.
Ishmael.
Hagar.
Hagar, I completely forgot her name. When she's with Ishmael, which Ishmael was actually a lot older than you think when they ran off. Anyways, so there it is. We've got a very different kind of plant here. It's not even mentioned in Genesis 1. It's here in Genesis 2. And it's modified. How's it modified? Shaddai. It's modified by Shaddai.
Yes.
Now,
spoiler alert. You got a whole new kind of man coming here too.
Let's look at Shaddai real quick. Here we go. 7704 Shaddai. Quick search, Genesis. And I can't find it in 1. I was really hoping, because I don't want to reinvent the wheel here. I want to figure out what's being told to me. But here, I just starts in 2:5. Plant, right? Shia, Shaddai, plant of the field. Before it was in the earth, Aretz. And now we have, and every Oshab, Shaddai. It's modified. It's Oshab, Shaddai. Why is it modified? We've got Shaddai a lot. Now, we can jump forward here in eSword we're at 2:19. Out of the ground, Yahweh God formed every, he. That is a very broad term you'll find if you start doing a cross-reference on he. That's 24:16. He of Shaddai. There it's modified again. We can't find anything modified like that in Genesis chapter 1. Now, some people might look and they might say, yeah, but I see coal. Coal has to mean all. Coal most certainly does not have to mean all, because it can mean all within a context. You go up to Joel, in the part of Joel that Peter quotes from Joel 2, on the day of Pentecost, when it says, in that day, Yahweh would pour out his spirit on all flesh. It's kol. Kol basar is flesh. Basar. Kol basar. Are we talking about chipmunks and oxen? I don't think we are. It has to be contextual. So before anybody says, but, every step back and contextualize it. So again, we're seeing this modified, shade. We have the he, shade. All of the lives of shade. And in 220, again, we have the he, shade. This is important. This is important that we have this modifier, shade, because what we do is we have this modifier, shade, and then we see it again in 3:14. Anyways.
I'm going to jump in for a second and show you Genesis chapter 2. Oh, I was there. So day God rested. No, where was he? (3:14). He's on 3:14. And that's what I want to show you is the one atom that he uses is instead of 120, I'll look up 220. And he said, but for Adam. Now, when we see here, it said 120. Well, there's just the straight up all 120. Let us make man in our own image. And they're saying it all, but it is not the same word. Look how many words there are for Adam. And that's all underneath Hebrew 120. And then if you also click Hebrew 121, it's Adam. And that Adam doesn't start, even though it's spelled the same, until Genesis 3:17. So all I can say is add that to the mix. We'll get it.
This is all very important because that modifier is not in 1 and it is in 2. And for instance, when I said stop, full stop at Genesis 2:5, because we need to think about that for a second. All of us have been taught that when we read in English, and every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew, for Yahweh Elohim had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. Now it is interesting that just before it says these are the generations, Shemaim and Aretz, when they were created. In the day that Yahweh Elohim made the earth and the heavens, in the day, we need to seriously consider what this Yom means and contextualize it, and have nothing but contempt and suspicion of everything the Masoretes have fed us. So, we've got this issue. There was not a man to till the ground. So, what portion of that are we supposed to be emphasizing? Are we supposed to be emphasizing there was not a man? What is, no, I'm not bored with my background. Get out of here. Get out of here. I don't know why they're doing that while I'm making a video. So are we supposed to emphasize that there was not a man? Or are we supposed to read the entire statement? There was not a man to till the ground. There were men, but there was not a specific sort of man made to till the ground, to bring forth the Shia Shaddai, the vegetation of the Shaddai. Now, you can cross-reference Shaddai. I recommend that you do. And I believe what you will find in general is that when you see Shaddai, it is going to be a term that modifies anything that it appears with to be of a character that is, in a sense, domestic. If you can boil it down to one word, domestic. Now, you might find a few bumps in the road as you go, but consider the translations, the translators, and what is being said around that word. But the bulk, the weight of what you will find with Shaddai is going to be something that absolutely eludes, if not denotes, domestic. Domestic. Domestic vegetation. How about domestic lives? He Shaddai, domestic, different than all the lives and all the plants and wild animals. And do I dare say wild men made in Genesis 1? Now, before you accuse me of everything from blasphemy to hate speech, you better be able to prove conclusively your position. Because I'm just looking for what it is that this document is really saying. So if Genesis chapter 2 is just a retelling of Genesis chapter 1, as we've been taught, what I'm confused about, more than the fact that, the thing about Shia not showing up in Genesis 1, or the modifier Shaddai not showing up in Genesis 1, Yahweh, Elohim not causing it to rain yet upon the earth. Why would that be mentionable if it was just day 6? Why would that be mentionable? Just ask yourself that. What's the point? If it's day 6, I'm not sure I completely understand what the point of mentioning that there wasn't rain. It hadn't rained. It hadn't rained in 5 days.
Where's Ruger?
Well, let me see.
Ruger.
Honestly, well, what do we got?
Oh, here he is.
We got light on 1.
Getting crazier by the day.
We've got the firmament on 2.
Say hi.
We've got the dry land appearing on 3 and the seas gathering into their places. We've got the heavenly lights on 4.
I was going to change the laundry.
We've got the plant life all being made on 5. And then essentially man and earth beast, earth life made on 6. But yet for some good reason, the great God who wrote this through his servant Moses, decided it was very important to let us know that on day 6 it hadn't rained yet. No, I'm a little excited because
He's the best, huh?
I just think it would be best to think these things through instead of just digesting all of the dogma that we've been taught, that the people who taught us were taught, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. Let's back up and let's think about it. He hadn't caused it to rain yet. By day 6, why does that matter? If you've got a better explanation, you can go ahead and put it in the comments. I don't censor comments. Now, there wasn't a man to till the ground. Again, it's being modified. Not there wasn't a man. It doesn't say there wasn't a man. It's modified. There wasn't a man to till the ground. There wasn't a certain kind of man. I never said better. I never said worse. I said there wasn't a certain kind of man.
A wee a damn. Give a damn and have a wee a damn time.
That's what I said. There was a mist that went up from the earth and watered the whole face of Adamah, the soil, so that all of that plant life from Genesis 1 could grow and could thrive. And it did. But none of that special plant life, Shia, none of that was growing. Why? It's Shia Shaddai. There wasn't a man, a certain kind of man, to till, to work the ground. The word is servant, to be a servant of the ground, to bring forth those things. Certain kind of man. It doesn't say there wasn't man. Now, starting in Genesis 2:7, and Yahweh Elohim formed Adam, the man. What man? Oh, all men. Well, wait a minute. All men? Wait a minute. Adam. See, right here, there was not a Adam. There was not a Adam. For what? To till the ground. So when it says here, Yahweh Elohim formed Adam, all men? No, maybe what he did was he formed Yitzhar. It's not the bara we see in Genesis 1. Yitzhar, he sculpted. He specially took the time to sculpt this certain man who would till.
Yeah, what was it that, who was it? Angela saying something last night? That's where he scooped the soils that had magnetic properties and he mixed the right amount around our little. Well, aren't we battery operated magnets in an Amelina swastika swirling vortex of never ending Mobius strips? Something like that, just waiting to keep it. Hang on, don't let anything separate our soul and spirit. No.
Till the ground. Maybe that's why we have Adam in 1 and Adam in 2, because Adam means man. So Yitzhar sculpted the man to till the ground. So, to till Adamah, ground, not eretz, the earth. Adamah, special man, specific man, okay? So he formed Adamah of the dust, and it's a part of the Adamah, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And man became, here it is, he, Napash. He became he, Napash, living soul. Interesting, it's Napashi in 1, but I digress. Genesis 2:8, and Yahweh Elohim planted a gun Here we go. Kadam, right? Oden. And there he put Adam, who he had Yitzhar sculpted. And out of the ground made Yahweh Elohim to grow every tree. Now we have tree. Adamah, out of the Adamah. This is the same ground. This is soil. This is earth. This is what things
This is your red blood cells.
grow from. This is the top part. This is the good stuff. That good stuff grows from. And every tree, we have oats, that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. The tree of life, also in the midst of the Gan and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We won't get into the wording of those things. For now, let's just say that those things are okay in this context because we're not proving those things here. We're not proving anything. We're proving what it is that the text says. That's all I'm doing. And then we have the river, right? Ner. We don't know if that's a river. We know it's a waterway. It's some sort of water. It went out of Odin to water 4 heads. And then we go into the 4 heads, right? Now, after we get out of the 4 heads of the river, and those are all very important. Those contain vastly valuable information. They certainly do, but we're going to skip over that because that's not what our main focus is here. We're going to jump right up to 2:15 and continue there. So 2:15, and Yahweh Elohim took the man, put him into the Gan Oden, to dress and keep it, because this Adam was made special for a specific purpose. And Yahweh Elohim commanded the man, saying, of every tree of God you can freely eat, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat of it, for in the day that you eat thereof you will surely die. His commandment not to be found in Genesis chapter 1. Because there's a difference. Just because both the Adam of 1 and the Adam of 2 are told what they may eat does not make them the same. 2:18, and Yahweh Elohim said, it's not good for that man to be alone. I'll make him a help suitable for him. Now here's where I get confused again, because it's easy to confuse me. I'm not that smart. 2:19. Now, out of the Adamah, not Aretz, out of the Adamah. This is the same stuff that this Adam was taken from. Yahweh Elohim, he formed Yitzhar. Every he, Shadeh, there's that modifier. It's a specific kind of life. Call it domestic if you want, or if you don't want, then you come up with a better descriptive that properly translates Shadeh. And every Aub, Shamayim, remember, every, that's kol. Kol doesn't always mean all. Kol is in context. I will pour out my spirit on kol basar, all flesh. So, are we talking about animals? birds, fish? Or when all flesh, does that mean man? Consider these things, and brought them unto Adam to see what he would call them. And whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. So, and he gave names to all the cattle. This is 2:20. It says cattle, but it's bema. I'm not sure that bema is cattle. But every fowl of the air, every he, shadeh. But for Adam, there was not found a help suitable for him. I'm so confused because in Genesis 1, I just read this. So you could understand after I show you, you can understand why I'm so confused. I'm not smart. Right here on the 6th day, it says, Elohim said, let the earth bring forth he, nabash, after its kind, right? Behma, which they say is cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth, after its kind, and it was so. It happened right there, 124. It happened. And then 125, Elohim made the beast of the earth after its kind, cattle after its kind, everything that creeps upon the earth after their kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. It's a done deal. It just happened. 126, and Elohim said, let us make man in our image. Wait a second. I got man being made right here in chapter 2. And what is it? I'm sorry, chapter 2:7. I get confused. I told you it's easy to confuse me. Not that smart. 2:7, he made man. But if I go forward, in 2:19, it says, out of the ground, the Yahweh Elohim formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air and brought them unto Adam to see what he would call them. Are you guys seeing a problem? In 1, all those, right? They were made, correct, and it was a done deal. And then he says, let us make man in our image after our likeness. After it was a done deal, it happened. After he makes man. Genesis 2, what does he do? Well, first off, he makes man from the Adamah. And then in 2:19, he makes these, he, Shaddai, from the Adamah. And he's making them after man. So I guess it doesn't matter what kind of mental, verbal, textual tricks you want to do to try to make Genesis 2 a detailed retelling of day 6 in Genesis chapter 1. You have, if you're going to stick with that, and that's going to be your dogma, you have a clear contradiction in chronology. Deal with it. Deal with it before you make any comments. Does anybody else out there find it to be interesting that Yahweh Elohim said it's not good for that Adam to be alone? I'll make him a help suitable for him. And out of Adamah, Yahweh Elohim formed every he, Shaddai. And every Ob, Shammai. He brought him to Adam to see what he'd call him. And whatsoever Adam called Hinakash. That's what the name was. And Adam gave names to all, Bema, Aub, every he, Shaddai. We're going to get into why it is this term he would be being used in the same sentence as Bema in the future, for a good reason. But there was not found a helpmeet for him. That's interesting. If you don't find that interesting, maybe someday you will. That Yahweh Elohim would bring what? Opossums? Horses? I mean, I have a hard time thinking that what he was doing was trying to match those things up with Adam. But that's another video. That's something different. And Yahweh Elohim, he caused the deep sleep to fall upon Adam. He slept. And it says he took one of his ribs, and there's a lot of controversy, Selo, about that, closed up the flesh, and he made this woman. Okay, Adam says, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. And then in chapter 3, he gives her a name. And there's something very interesting about that name that we have to talk about. But when you consider the modifiers being used in Genesis chapter 2 that are not used in Genesis chapter 1, when you consider the fact that in Genesis chapter 1, each day is given as an ordinal number, not a cardinal number, except the very first. And then when you go into Genesis chapter 2, that it starts before this story of Adam in the Gan Oden, or Garden of Eden. These are the generations. These are generations of the heaven and earth when they were created, in the day that Yahweh Elohim made the earth and the heavens. That's that whole story we've seen so far up to that point. And we don't know what kind of time has passed. Because Eon is very interesting. The idea, the concept, how it's used. Context is very key. The fact that our lexicography is dominated by these occultists called rabbis and Masoretes and so-called Jews. But I'll tell you this, with as ignorant as I find myself to be, and with as much as I find myself to not know as I learn, and with as little time as I have to put into this, I'm not seeing the same story in Genesis 2 as in Genesis 1. You have something different, unique, and specific. You have a specific, special man that was created in 2 to do a specific thing. Put in a specific place with a special purpose, special role. And here's the deal. Yahweh, Elohim, the creator of it all, has the prerogative to do as he will, as he sees good. Now, to not argue with anyone concerning the veracity of the Hebrew scriptures. what I'm doing here is trying to understand what they say before we can have a good, constructive argument about the historicity and the veracity of the Hebrew scriptures. We first have to clear away all of the garbage that has been handed down to us through the Masoretes. Unfortunately, through Greek translations, and most unfortunately, through things like Nestle Aland United Bible Society, that simply mixes so much existing manuscript evidence all together in this calico-y, hodgepodge, mix stuff. No single source stuff. Feeble mind that is so utterly imperfect that
I don't want to do this. Check it out.
Here's another article from that Velikovsky page, Velikovsky archive, on Saturn and the Flood. The world in collision comprises only the last two acts of the cosmic drama, one that occurred in the middle of the second millennium before the present era, the other during the 8th and early part of the 7th century before the present era. Prior to the events described in World in Collision, Venus, following its expulsion from Jupiter, was on a highly eccentric orbit for a period of time measured certainly by centuries, perhaps millennia, before its near encounters with the Earth. While the actual beginning of the drama is shrouded in the mist of gray antiquity and difficult to pinpoint with exactitude, there is a point at which a clearer picture emerges. This is the time when the two giant planets, Saturn and Jupiter, approached each other closely. Possibly they were close for a long period of time, passing near one another as they traveled along orbital paths quite dissimilar to those of today. Saturn and Jupiter are so often associated in cosmological history, and sometimes I even considered the possibility that they may have constituted a double star system, in which there are many in the universe. I said that Saturn and Jupiter were stars, though today we know them as planets. Actually, in Worlds in Collision in the last chapter, I used the word star in referring to the two giant planets. There I wrote, with respect to the future, that some dark star like Jupiter or Saturn may be in the path of the sun, may be attracted to the system and cause havoc in it. At that time, it was said that they were planets, not stars, while today it is known that Jupiter and Saturn, too, are star-like, producing several times the amount of heat they receive from the sun. The cosmological thought of ancient peoples conceived of the history of the Earth as divided into periods of time, each ruled by a different planet. Of these, the epoch of Saturn, or Kronos, was remembered as the time of bliss. It was made to precede the period during which Jupiter was the dominant deity, to come, when the light of the moon shall be as the light of the sun, and the light of the sun shall be sevenfold, as the light of the 7 days. Isaiah 30:36. It is conceivable that the Earth was, at that time, a satellite of Saturn, afterward possibly becoming a satellite of Jupiter.
Yeah, right.
With the end of the 7 days of light, the Earth became enveloped in waters of cosmic origin, whether coming direct from sources describe the waters of the flood combinations on Saturn. After the deluge, many forms of life came into being, especially plant life. Thus it happened that Saturn was later called the god of vegetation.
Well, he probably should have explained it better. Velikovsky has some crazy stuff, but of course, I don't believe him on so much. But man, I had so much to go over. Here's that mothball fleet. These are all retired ships, some from the 30s. And we just found out in World War II, they only could make 250 torpedoes a year. They couldn't fill every ship's torpedo holes. I'm beginning to think they found these type of things, that we've had a lot of resets, but not much is pushing me off of, man, we're in the middle of a reset. Well, you want to hear a little more of that? Because I don't mind.
And the person responsible for them, or people, if that's what you believe. And I will tell you this. If I found good evidence with my feeble mind that is so utterly imperfect, that showed me that, get out of here. I don't know why they're doing that while I'm making a video. So are we supposed to emphasize that there was not a man? Or are we supposed to read the entire statement that there was not a man to till the ground? There were men, but there was not a specific sort of man made to till the ground, to bring forth the Shia Shaddai, the vegetation of the Shaddai. Now, you can cross-reference Shaddai. I recommend that you do. And I believe what you will find in general is that when you see Shaddai, it is going to be a term that modifies anything that it appears with to be of a character that is, in a sense, domestic. If you can boil it down to one word, domestic. Now, you might find a few bumps in the road as you go, but consider the translations, the translators, and what is being said around that word. But the bulk, the weight of what you will find with Shaddai is going to be something that absolutely eludes, if not denotes, domestic. Domestic. Domestic vegetation. How about domestic lives? He Shaddai. Domestic. Different than all the lives and all the plants and wild animals. And do I dare say wild men made in Genesis 1? Now, before you accuse me of everything from blasphemy to hate speech, you better be able to prove conclusively your position. Because I'm just looking for what it is that this document is really saying. So if Genesis chapter 2 is just a retelling of Genesis chapter 1, as we've been taught, what I'm confused about, more than the fact that, the thing about Shia not showing up in Genesis 1, or the modifier Shaddai not showing up in Genesis 1, Yahweh, Elohim not causing it to rain yet upon the earth, why would that be mentionable if it was just day 6? Why would that be mentionable? And just ask yourself that. What's the point? If it's day 6, I'm not sure I completely understand what the point of mentioning that there wasn't rain. It hadn't rained. It hadn't rained in 5 days. Well, let me see. Honestly, what do we got? We got light on 1. We've got the firmament on 2. We've got the dry land appearing on 3 and the seas gathering into their places. We've got the heavenly lights on 4. We've got the plant life all being made on 5. And then essentially man and earth beast, earth life made on 6. But yet for some good reason, the great God who wrote this through his servant Moses, decided it was very important to let us know that on day 6 it hadn't rained yet. Now, I'm a little excited because I just think it would be best to think these things through instead of just digesting all of the dogma that we've been taught, that the people who taught us were taught, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. Let's back up and let's think about it. He hadn't caused it to rain yet. By day 6, why does that matter? If you've got a better explanation, you can go ahead and put it in the comments. I don't censor comments. Now, there wasn't a man to till the ground. Again, it's being modified. Not there wasn't a man. It doesn't say there wasn't a man. It's modified. There wasn't a man to till the ground. There wasn't a certain kind of man. I never said better. I never said worse. I said there wasn't a certain kind of man. That's what I said. There was a mist that went up from the earth and watered the whole face of Adamah, the soil, so that all of that plant life from Genesis 1 could grow and could thrive. And it did. But none of that special plant life, Shia, none of that was growing. Why? It's Shia Shaddai. There wasn't a man, a certain kind of man, to till, to work the ground. The word is servant, to be a servant of the ground, to bring forth those things. A certain kind of man. It doesn't say there was man. Now, starting in Genesis 2:7, and Yahweh Elohim formed Adam, the man. What man? Oh, all men. Oh, wait a minute. All men? Wait a minute. Adam. See, right here, there was not a Adam. There was not a Adam. For what? To till the ground. So when it says here, Yahweh Elohim formed Adam, all men? No, maybe what he did was he formed Yitzhar. It's not the bara we see in Genesis 1. Yitzhar, he sculpted. He specially took the time to sculpt this certain man who would till the ground. Maybe that's why we have Adam in 1 and Adam in 2, because Adam means man. So Yitzhar sculpted the man to till the ground. So to till Adamah, ground, not Eretz, the earth. Adamah, special man. specific man. Okay? So he formed Adamah of the dust, and it's a part of the Adamah, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And man became, here it is, he, Napash. He became he, Napash, living soul. Interesting, it's Napashi in one, but I digress. Genesis 2:8, and Yahweh Elohim planted a gun. Here we go, Kadam, right? Oden, and there he put Adam, who he had Yitzhar sculpted. And out of the ground made Yahweh Elohim to grow every tree. Now we have tree. Adamah, out of the Adamah. This is the same ground. This is soil. This is earth. This is what things grow from. This is the top part. This is the good stuff that good stuff grows from. And every tree, we have oats, that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. The tree of life, also in the midst of the Gan and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We won't get into the wording of those things. For now, let's just say that those things are okay in this context because we're not proving those things here. We're not proving anything. We're proving what it is that the text says. That's all I'm doing. And then we have the river, right? Ner. We don't know if that's a river. We know it's a waterway. It's some sort of water. It went out of Odin to water 4 heads. And then we go into the 4 heads, right? Now, after we get out of the 4 heads of the river, and those are all very important. Those contain vastly valuable information. They certainly do. But we're going to skip over that because that's not what our main focus is here. We're going to jump right up to 2:15 and continue there. So 2:15, and Yahweh Elohim took the man, put him into the Gan Oden to dress and keep it, because this Adam was made special for a specific purpose. And Yahweh Elohim commanded the man, saying, of every tree of Gan you can freely eat, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat of it, for in the day that you eat thereof you will surely die. This commandment not to be found in Genesis chapter 1. Because there's a difference. Just because.
Well, I think I am going to wrap it up right there. What I'm going to probably do is mirror this video without, the other, 2 hours in front of it, because this is really good stuff. And so I hope you're looking forward to more of that. Let's just close in a quick prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for your mercy, your grace, your love to us, your steadfast love, your guiding and prompting. And thank you that in my mind, I see more how you made us like clay. You are the potter and we are the clay. And Heavenly Father, I pray that each one of us will exercise the faith we have while always ready for more faith. Father, I still want to be a better slave/servant to you.
And I know that many people agree with that. They want to please you and serve you also. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for this chance to share. I pray that you will bless myself and everyone that is listening. Dear Heavenly Father, be with Tommy and Randy, all of our dear friends. We thank you and for your mercy and grace. In Jesus' name, amen. Everyone, I just worn out, man. And I got to get some chili in me. It's a flat earth nation. You know, I'm never going to tell you anything else. Why would I? Me and my friends trying to prove we have your best interest at heart. For eternity, that's all. Amen. Hallelujah. I hope.